Okay, welcome back. Thanks for joining us on the second interview for our The Settlers podcast. I'm super excited because I just sat down with Stephen Ma, the executive producer of Human Park, a game that's being built by the team at Virtually Human Studios, the creators of Zedron. In their words, Human Park is an outlandish experience, bringing a community of thrill seekers together to overthrow an ominous body that looks to crush expression and seize control. I talked to Steve today about the opportunity in Web3 and NFT gaming, how we can capture the imagination of traditional gamers, and the role that Human Park will play in ushering in this new paradigm of not only NFT ownership, but immersive experiences in the future of gaming. So make sure you like this video. I'm also going to play their hype trailer right after this session. Thank you so much for joining us and supporting the Settlers podcast. Here we go. What you gonna do? 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 Pasino, 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 pasino. What you gonna do? Stephen, welcome to the Settlers podcast, man. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Summer break here in California. Nothing too much to complain about, and glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you for jumping on. As we get started, I'd love for you to tell us more about Human Park and what you're trying to create for Web3 gaming.
What are we trying to do for Web3 gaming? We're building a bridge between Web3 and Web2 gaming. And what we're trying to do with Human Park specifically is get as many people to understand the importance and the value of digital ownership, NFTs, and how that can relate into gaming and what that actually could mean outside of the realm of PFPs and things that are visual, but something that lives within a client that they understand, Unreal client, and something that they could show off, control, and explore and socialize with.
That's awesome. What's been the story so far for Human Park? Where are you guys at? What's going on?
So right now we're in the midst of launching season 0. It's more of a proof of concept of what we love to do. A couple months ago, we released our nudes, which were the first user customized NFT avatars that were built in Unreal Engine, rendered out and delivered and airdropped to all of our members for absolutely free. And we're continuing to invest into our community. We dropped off Obelisk a couple weeks ago, and that'll be revealed into 2 parts, which they'll either reveal a Wayfinder or some season 0 content filled with our first narrative-driven characters, which will be supported by awesome comics, short stories, web stories, and game experience.
That's awesome. Whenever I've asked founders of games to come onto the podcast, we always like starting off with, especially with where we are with Web3 games today. This isn't a new industry, so this
Mhm.
is games have been around for decades. I love to take you back and take the audience back to for Stephen. What was your earliest memory of gaming? What was the first title that you played? Um, you must have been. There's probably a few games on top of your mind, I'm sure.
Oh wow, and that's yeah, it's really going to date me as well. So I thank you for that. My brother was about 9, 10 years older than me. So luckily, I had a lot of fond memories of gaming. He was right at that age. I think the first game that I've ever played was Doom. But I
Classic,
really,
classic.
really fell in love. Oh, Duke Nukem. I forgot about that. That was one of the
Oh, you're
first
an
games I
FPS
played as
guy.
well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then I got into StarCraft, and then StarCraft Brood War, and played almost every console from TurboGrafx 16 to uh, the Sega Dreamcast, which was very short lived. But yeah, I think a big mainstay of my gaming and where I have formed a lot of relationships, people I still talk to today, has been around FPSs. Rainbow Six, Counter Strike, Halo, and then some PC gaming as well. StarCraft, as I mentioned, but League of Legends I've been playing for almost a decade. So have formed some friends there and been playing that. Uh, yeah, it's been
This is
great.
going to be a hard question. Favorite game out of all of those that you've played? Like, what's your all-time fave?
Favorite game.
How about
Oof.
let's say favorite game based on quality of the actual gaming experience.
Okay. Um, I'm going to say where I really fell in love with gaming was I'm going to say Mario 64. It was the first time that jump between a scrolling 2D platformer into controlling Mario in a 3D space and like messing around with his face and pulling it in the very beginning while you're just idle. I think that really opened up my eyes of like, wow, this things can be different. This is evolving, this is changing, and seeing the acceleration from that point. Seeing the type of quality of gaming we have now, cross-platform, the fact that we can play games across with anybody in the world with relatively no latency is pretty amazing. Something I take for granted a lot, but yeah, I think Mario 64 was the first game that I was just very amazed by of what could be done in the space.
It sounded like it was like an opportune. It was an inflection point in gaming itself. It was like you were participating in like a change in how games were delivered. And of course, I'm going to make the connection into NFT gaming for that same reason. But what do you think the impact of digital ownership is going to be when we think about the future of gaming in that same framework of almost new frontiers being made today?
I think it's going to change the whole landscape and what we think is valuable. It's interesting that games like Final Fantasy or Skyrim, you'll pour hundreds of hours. GTA, and most of multiplayer games, if you get high there in the ladders, getting to diamond, platinum ranks, you spend thousands of hours playing those games. But after that community kind of dwindles apart, you're not left with what I would say equity, right? And I think digital ownership and NFTs will change that. And I think it will be a permanent solution to something that gamers have felt for a long time. Where, you know, yeah, I collected all the stars in Mario 64. I got all the power moons in Mario Odyssey. And then I got to high ranks in StarCraft. But it's hard to showcase that your accomplishment, your career, your experiences that you've had across all those different games. And I think NFTs and digital ownership will change that in a really relevant way. And I'm glad to be a part of Human Park, which is, I think, one of the only projects out there that's really focused on resolving that and pitching that, building a bridge between the NFT community and gamers.
Why do you think historically over 30, 40 years, with so many people have spent so much time in gaming? It's almost been, we talk about your Marios, and then even more recently with the emergence of real professional esports as well. Why do you think so many people game just in general? Let's talk about like where we've come from and then today.
It's interesting. I think, if I think about the core, it's self expression in one capacity or the other. It's you get to showcase your skill, your style of play, and as much as people have that in soccer or football, depending where you are in the world, people have their own style and what they're good at, and very rarely will you see somebody who's just like, okay, you're perfect in every capacity. And gaming's similar. I think that's why esports has grown. You have these personalities, some styles of play, new ways to even form strategies, whether they're playing Dota or League or COD or any game. Like, oh wow, like that's a brand new way. I never thought of, taking that strategy or positioning myself in that way or using that skill or whatever tools that you have in the game. And we have almost every genre, like we do in film and television, in sports. You have RPGs, you have multiplayers, you have all these different types of games, and I think why people are so attracted to it, it's an escape. It's something you can find yourself. It's almost like a time machine. I used to think that when every new release would come out in November, um, but it's really, you get to share those stories. It's a way to bond with friends, especially nowadays. And I think being able to see yourself, have that control over the level of entertainment you have is something that people won't stray away from, at least anytime in the future.
Yeah, there's an interesting point about where we're at in Web3 gaming in general. You talk about self-expression just broadly in the gaming category. When you and the team started thinking about Human Park, what was your observations on the actual space? What were we missing?
I think it was control. As a user in a lot of the NFT projects itself, I think being able to define yourself, express yourself, was relatively limited. I think a lot of the projects, you get handed like, hey, here's what you look like, and here's how valuable it is. And what we wanted to do is almost turn that on its head. Where, how about you define that? And that's what really pushed us towards building a client that first was going to allow pretty much our users to come in, customize their avatar, and be able to own that, become an NFT, and then them gain ownership over that. And we're going to continue to push that boundary in every capacity that we can.
I remember when, I actually remember when Human Park first launched their Twitter. I saw a bunch of nudes being. It was like this nude guy running around like a football stadium, um, and I
Yeah.
realized immediately this is some edgy stuff. And then afterwards, it was these nudes with like tattoos on their faces. I mean, this is, it's intentional. And so what were you trying to do when you first went to market with? There was so little on Human Park. It was just like on Twitter, it was something about expression and like freedom. It was very, honestly, a bit culty to me. What was the take from your team? Was that intentional? Is that just my read?
No, we figured, let's disrupt the space. Let's do something a little different in how we approach things. And one thing, I don't know if everybody in the community really understood that, but all those pictures were actually in-engine shots. We were building inside of a client. We're building a client that we're wanting to release, and every one of those scenes were, foreshadowing to what we want to build in the future, as far as self-expression goes, exploration, the types of games, the types of different types of entertainment you can have. but yeah, our goal there was to uh, send nudes, I guess, to put it lightly, but also just make sure that we're showing more than saying. I think on our side of things, when we first started the project, we wanted to be different in a way where the roadmap wasn't the most important thing. Showing progress, showing development, showing what we're doing, and getting to the actual tangible experiences into our players' hands as soon as possible uh, was the key element. And we wanted as many people to join and understand that as possible. And that's a big reason why we didn't charge for it. We're doing that development regardless of selling a drop or doing a drop. We wanted to give those things for free because we think this is going to transform the space, and we're here to disrupt it.
Mm. Obviously, you're one of the leaders of the actual game itself. Can you give us a view on who you're building this with? Who are the folks, key stakeholders you have involved in? This is incredibly ambitious, obviously, and so love to hear more of that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I sit between the VHS side and Spectre side. We're a dedicated crew at Human Park. So there's a team that is completely focused on delivering the project, development of the client, and making sure that we have a robust set of support through Web3, the technology stack, and making sure that everything we're doing, especially because we're kind of edging into things that are unknown or not done in the space, uh, that we utilize all the support that we have from the success and uh, proof of Zed Run and that project, as well as the fidelity and development studio, Spectre Studios. I think Spectre has, they. I love talking to Rick, who's one of the co-founders there and creative directors. He's so humble, but they've done everything from film and television, been featured on the Late Show, and most recently with the film Elvis, doing VFX and some post production work. And those people are the same developers and artists that are pouring their effort into Human Park on a full time basis, and I think that's really, really amazing. Looking at how much detail they put in, all the tattoos were hand drawn. Like it's really cool to see the level of detail that they make, especially with. I love the background. I'd rather almost have their background in film and television because you don't get a second chance. Currently the gaming developers rely on day one patching. We've all seen that. Games don't come out as smooth as they used to when they were on cartridges. But yeah, Spectre's an amazing crew. VHS and the Zed Run team are an amazing crew who've really pushed and helped us push that boundary for Human Park.
Sounds like the next chapter for gaming. The VHS, so Virtual Human Studios partnership with Spectre Studios. This is more like it reminds me of a more of the immersive environment view on the metaverse that people are continuing to have. You have the Web3 crypto integrations with Virtual Human Studios, and then with Spectre, just this best in class. I know that they have a very strong background in virtual reality as well. I mean, this is, what is your take on when people talk about the metaverse? What the hell does that mean? Like in 10 years, does that mean more people are gaming with each other, or is it like we put on our VR headsets and we're like sitting in meeting rooms with our bosses? Like what does that look like in 10 years if we were to reconceptualize the metaverse?
I think the possibilities are out there. And one of the first things that we had at Human Park, it's like, hey, we're not a metaverse, because we just didn't feel like we should be telling people or dictating what a metaverse is. It depends on each person. I think within the gaming aspect, if we were to relate it to that, a person's metaverse could be League of Legends, and then they watch Arcane, and they buy and go to the World Championships, and that's kind of the world that they live in. Or you have people who play World of Warcraft, and they go to BlizzCon and they do cosplay, and Um, what we're trying to achieve is to be open to all those different types of experiences and really build a platform uh, of experiences and a technology stack that will embrace and bridge the gap. But will people be wearing VR sets and in the future and doing meetings and living in this 3D world? I don't know. We're doing a video conference from halfway across the world right now, and uh, I don't think it's too far fetched. I do think wearing that thing for long periods of time gets a little heavy, but as technology grows, I think the metaverse and what we define as a metaverse is going to become more personal than it is a shared experience.
Yeah, why do you think I love thinking about so much of trying to predict the future is about figuring out who we were in the past and what was successful. You were talking about StarCraft, League of Legends, World of Warcraft. I talk a lot about RuneScape alongside those three games as well. Kind of grew up with that. I mean, why do you think these titles were successful, just broadly speaking? Because these are titles that have really defined generations of gamers, and arguably today with stuff like League of Legends, it's almost a generation of people in general. So
I think with those games specifically, it's that it became about storytelling. And, maybe that's my purview and background from marketing, but I do truly believe that most of, experiences are told again through stories. Whether it's like, oh my gosh, you should have seen, let me show this video of my son scoring a soccer goal, or some of the first experiences you had, whether they're funny, sad, sentimental, or something completely benign and forgettable. I think those games really enabled themselves to have enough of a community size where you can share those kind of stories and have those relational points like, oh my gosh, I was down, I had one base left, I came back and I did a medic drop, or and was able to win the game with 6 Marines, or whatever the story was. I think that the coverage and more importantly the community was so involved, um, and supportive. And with those types of communities, I think that the fandom and being part of that group, whenever I think you see that level of passion, it becomes infectious, right? There's a part of my life where I didn't even like a soccer team, but my soccer coach was so into Chelsea that his passion kind of pushed into the rest of the soccer team. So I think that is a major part of it, is being able to tell stories, being able to share those experiences and uh, express yourself in those spaces.
yeah, we think so much about that reminds me of a thought process on Web3 as well. As much as it is about financial business model innovation and technological innovation, it is so much about social organization and communities, and so much of gaming as well. I mean, you talk about storytelling. I mean, that is inherently where society has come from. Like our people have been, we've operated on stories being passed down, on victories, defeats, and that's what actually builds emotional attachment to things. And I think that's incredibly interesting. And so, as you look towards the game design for Human Park, then I mean, you were talking about IP assets, NFTs, obviously owning in-game characters. What does the future look like for Human Park and for the player? Is it just the nudes themselves? Nudes, great name by the way. 10 out of 10 for me.
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10.
Uh, no, so, in the next couple of days, we'll be releasing our first seasonal content, season 0, which is our first, or I guess another investment into our community that they'll be receiving for absolutely free. But it's our first showcase of wearables and cosmetics within Human Park. And when you compare that to any Web 2 game, it seems relatively simple. It's like, okay, that just looks different. It's a visual difference. It's a customization. But what we're building, and why it took a good amount of time is that you actually own these. They're NFTs. They're NFTs that could be applied to your 3D avatar that you can control within gameplay, within the world, the 3D world that is Human Park, which people will be able to experience in the very, very near future. Um, so I think what we're building is, more than just a skin release, but a showcase that to the Web2 world, to the NFT crowd. Like it could be much more than a PFP. And then for the NFT gaming space, it showcases that you could own those skins, those legendary skins. You could own, that Darth Vader skin that you got in Fortnite for getting through all the, levels, and be able to own it and not just have it tied to your account. But say, hey, maybe that's not my favorite character. You want to sell it and you want to buy something else with it. You have the power and the capacity to do that within Human Park, and I think that's why it's so impactful.
Do you think with this is beyond human park in general, but is the monetization model for games continuously dropping new assets? I mean, before it was you think about a game like CS:GO, it was loot crates and more loot crates, buy more loot crates. With Hearthstone, it's buy more packs, all of those type of things, right? Like what does it look like for Web3 gaming in general? Is it because it sounds like what you're doing is if you're an early believer in what we're doing for the folks who participated in our nudes, you'll get stuff airdrop to you for free. Is that even a feasible business model for the long term? Like, how do you guys actually make money out of all this and continue building out the team?
Well, those are proofs of concept, right? One thing we don't believe in, or I guess that's too bold of a statement, but something we want to showcase is that here's the proof first. Here's what you can expect. Will we be selling cosmetics and visuals and have drops ourselves? Yes, of course. But we want people to understand and our community to understand that we're building this regardless because we want to disrupt the space. We want to add that value. And we want to showcase that, even our first seasonal content is going to be backed up with digital comics, high res posters, really cool game experiences. And those are important to us because if we're going to charge people in the future, we want them to fall absolutely in love with it, right? It's the same thing with CSGO. If you're brand new to the game, or heck, if you haven't played any gameplay at all, asking you to buy $1,000 knife or a $75 AK-47, what does it mean? What is the actual value to you versus after you poured hundreds of hours, you got pretty good. You've won some rounds there. I think there's a big difference, and I think our approach is very gamer advocate. We're on the gamer side of things. We're all gamers ourselves, and so we're gonna have that perception, and we're gonna fight and advocate for the I don't know, I guess the protection of the value there for our community.
Yeah, there's an interesting topic about I'm going to create an artificial framework by saying there's this self-expression sector type of subsector in gaming, and I think about you put stuff like Sandbox and Decentraland probably in there. Firstly, the place where the playground where you go in, explore, buy merch, put it on you, express yourselves. I mean, isn't this done already? What was the opportunity with Human Park then? Because I can buy stuff on Sandbox, I can buy my land, I can express myself there and meet up with friends. I mean, what's the point of Human Park?
I think it's the evolution of those types of experiences. Being built and being put onto Unreal 5. I think that in and of itself will make a monumental difference. We're building on the same type of architecture and technology stack that Fortnite is built on, as far as crossplay capabilities. And I think that's huge. We're not limited to a browser based or graphical limits on Web3 or traditional Web3 games. And that's why we're investing heavily into that development and tech stack where your NFTs and that Web3 completely interacts with our client. So being able to showcase yourself on the highest end PC, in a VR aspect in the future, yeah. Or if you want to show, mess around on your phone and kind of move around in the capacity, or your Switch or your PlayStation or whatever, that's important because we want there to be fidelity. Like as we mentioned, Spectre Studios are film and television grade. So I think one thing we can really showcase in Human Park that's very different than those projects is the level of fidelity that we can achieve.
Hmm. Hmm. Sounds like quality and that evolution of the actual experience itself. I mean, that is, I loved what you said before about helping players fall in love with gaming, and not even just gaming, but the experience of this environment that your team has created. Do you think that is how it almost feels cliche that every day on crypto Twitter people talk about, not, it's not play to earn, it's play and earn. It's not, you need to make it fun first, like all that type of like jargon, right? And it's like, in your opinion, how do we actually onboard more people? How do we capture the imagination of um, the everyday gamer who's playing on Xbox, on their PlayStation? How do we make these people understand that this is a much better model?
Uh, I think a conversation I had with Chris a couple months ago really kind of comes to mind is that, there's play to earn, and then there's building equity. And imagine building your net worth in this space, and you starting from zero. And I think that to me is one of the key elements is we're giving people value for their time, whether they want to socialize, whether they want to play some of the different types of game experiences within Human Park, the different types of partners that we have coming up. I think will open itself to a much broader audience. We can't talk about every partner. The only one I could probably mention is Atari. We're in partnerships with them, and we're looking to bring real gaming elements and mechanics within our game. And there's other very cool brands that we're working with that we're excited to talk about when the timing's right. But we want to show versus tell, and we want people to experience first. And much of what we're trying to do and what we're going to make sure moving forward is that there's always that accessibility. Whether you have an NFT, whether you don't have an NFT, can you come into Human Park and have fun and socialize and express yourself? Yeah. And if you want to take that to the next level, that's up to you. And I think um, what we want to empower is that you won't be left empty handed. Those things will have value. They're tied to your wallet. They're things that you actually own. So whether you want to part ways and sell those things, or whether you want to grow that, I think that becomes a part of each person's story, and what we're trying to build.
That's awesome. There's an interesting view on the future where, as gaming becomes more financialized, you almost have to capital allocate your own personal balance sheet into these different games. How does this work? If do you think, for example, Jack in 20 years, he's going to have to say to himself, "Man, I'm going to have to. I can only choose in order to be deeply involved in a game. You almost and I, for example, in like a League of Legends, that game has been around for 12, for 13 years now, and
Hmm.
if you had NFTs in that game, a majority of that would probably be added to your net worth. Would that be? Does that mean that as players, you can only really choose 4 or 5 because it's like Discord communities? You can only really keep track of a few different projects at the same time. I suppose that also brings in the question of interoperability. It's like if I use my assets here, you can go into somewhere else and use it as well. What's your type of thinking in terms of how this all looks like for players?
I mean, that's a great question on NFT interoperability, right? And I think the legendary skins and all the skins that I got from going to events in League are non-transferable. They don't interact with Fortnite, or they don't interact with StarCraft. They don't interact with any other ecosystem. And I think that's part of the beauty. Like if you want, um, you know, these things to interact or just sell on a secondary marketplace that's global, you have that. That's step one, right? Like the ownership part, being able to make that into a actual asset, actual equity, actual value. That's step one. Interoperability, and that's a big part of the reason why we're building an Unreal Engine. It's one of the mainstays within the gaming space. So many projects and games, film and television, cinematics have been built in Unreal Engine, and building off of that platform and what we're trying to do and bring in other projects into the space. I think we'll start seeing that blend a little bit. I think we're still very early in those stages of complete crossplay and those things talking to each other, because we still live in a world where things are rendered out. There's artists involved. Not every asset is the same, right? Especially when you talk about like a PFP that's completely flat versus our nudes are completely 3D modeled. They are rigged. They animate. They have bones. They have skeletal structures, textures. It's just a very different level of fidelity that's involved in that.
Mm. The actual, yeah, the actual technical depth that we almost have to go to create like actual fantastic Web3 experiences, it takes a lot. Do you actually think we need? Do you think we need traditional studios to introduce NFTs into their games before this really does go mass market? Because I think about free to play as well. We almost didn't have the game studios doing that. You had your like games built on the Facebook group, doing all that in-app purchases back in the day as well. They almost didn't need to wake up to it before, um, real adoption was happening. Do we need Web2 studios to start building NFT games? Do you think?
No, I think the things would coexist. I don't see them as competing. I see them as complementary, and I think the technologies will complement each other in the future. We just haven't crossed that bridge yet. We're trying to build one, um, to be honest, and I think the technology that goes behind our season zero content could potentially be used in a lot of different games. We're building a tech that allows for you to own a skin within Unreal Engine. I think, could that be useful? I mean, Apex Legends is built on Unreal, so is Fortnite, so is Dead by Daylight, a lot of different games where skins are involved. I think it would be pretty cool to play, a game, yeah, like Fortnite. And if I win 20 victory royales, I get one of 20 skins that exist. And I think that's the impact. More than I think those two will blend, much like film and television are starting to actually blend. With I think Arcane, that series was really well done, and it was one of the first like gaming centric narratives and animatics that really pushed the boundaries of like, oh, this is quality. Because I grew up in a world where I played Mario and I watched the film. I was like, this film is not great. uh, Same with the very early Mortal Kombat films, right? It's like, oof, this is pretty rough, Um, but now we're starting to see a better blend between entertainment and those gaming properties, and cinematics bleed into gaming itself, like The Last of Us. It's a little less gaming, a lot more cinematic. But as we get into Web3 and Web2, I think we'll need to work hand in hand. I don't think the solution is going to be isolated within Web2, and I don't think it's going to be isolated into Web3. Um, so I'm excited that those types of partnerships and discussions are already happening, and I think Human
Oh,
Park
that's
is
an alpha
definitely going to
leak.
be.
That's an alpha leak for sure. There's stuff.
I think.
There's stuff happening.
I
Don't.
think
That's all we need. That's a standard of alpha in this market. It's things are happening,
okay.
ladies and gents. Yeah, there's. It's incredible. The Arcane has captured the imagination of those who aren't even natively gamers. I've had so many people say they've watched Arcane who've never actually touched the client of League of Legends, and that's
Mhm.
incredible. We've never really. Maybe Pokemon was pretty good, but apart from that, I
Mhm.
struggle to think about something that has really tapped into non-gaming, the cultural conscience like that.
Yeah, it's tough, and that's why I think it's so few and far between.
Mhm.
It's very rare that you'll see that, and I've had friends they're like, "Hey, have you checked out Arcane? I saw it on Netflix." And like, "Hey, yeah, I've been playing that game for 12 years." Like um, it's really cool to see that, and it's a brand new generation that's being they're not seeing the game first, which is an interesting aspect. It makes me feel old in a lot of ways, but I love that those blends are happening, and it
Mhm.
gets me excited of what's going to accelerate Web 2 and Web 3,
Mhm.
not just gaming but entertainment as a whole.
And so, Stephen, looking forward into the roadmap for Human Park, what should people be excited about?
I don't want to promise too much. I know people get excited about roadmaps, but what should you get excited about? There's three things that I would be excited about that I personally am excited about working with the project. One is our continued investment into user customization. We really are looking to empower people to um, show who they really are, and have all the tools available at their disposal to really express themselves. I know it's a little tough, asking for people to spend a couple thousands of dollars on a PFP that's like, hey, this is how I want to represent myself, and it might not match up to the exact expectations or your personality. And um, that's the area that I get really excited about. Is we're going to allow people to express themselves uh, in brand new ways, and I think people will be really excited and go a little crazy on the customizations. Two, the partnerships. I know we mentioned one, but the level of partnerships that we're bringing to the table, they're worth getting excited about. I personally get a little nervous, uh, but I think whether you're a Web two gamer, whether you're into film and television, whether you're just NFT native that's only into crypto. I think the partnerships that we're going to bring to the table in this next year should have everyone excited, and for all the right reasons. The last thing, yeah, we're a game. We want to get gameplay and that social experience to our audience as soon as possible. And a lot of the reasons why certain things have been quiet is because we want to show. We don't want to just say, um, you know, and we're looking to get that across the line sooner than later. I know you said within the next year, hopefully a hell of a lot shorter than that. Um, we have an amazing development crew at Spectre Studios. We have an amazing tech support, tech stack from VHS as a whole. And we're looking to bring that to the table. And this year should be pretty cool and amazing for people interested in how that bridge is being built. And I'm glad to be part of that team that's going to bring it to the table.
Amazing. Try to try to squeeze as much alpha as I could out of you, but I think you're a very disciplined operator. It's a shame. It's a shame. Stephen, you've been incredibly generous with your time. I've appreciated you coming on to the Settlers podcast. I want to make sure that people understand to follow you guys on Twitter, check out Human Park, their website, join their Discord. There's a lot of stuff happening. Pick up a nude. Um, but yeah, Stephen, again, thank you so much for taking the time out and joining us today.
Of course. Thank you, Jack. Appreciate being here.